As we approach the ninth age of the video game console, we should go back over the long and turbulent history to learn from the victories and failures of the past. It is time to tell the tale of the tragedy of the Sega Mega Drive, or as it was ironically known as in North America, Genesis. In the ancient age, before even the first PlayStation or Xbox were sold on shelves, there were other titans battling it out for dominion over the home console. Empires like Atari, Sega, and Nintendo rose and fell as the blossoming video game industry began to solidify. Sega, the company that got its start in Hawaii making slot machines, had the revolutionary idea of selling a brief gaming experience for a quarter. This game, Periscope, would serve as a precursor to the arcade games that would follow it. Sega produced many games that would fill colorful arcades and battle it out with the likes of Mario and Pac-Man for the world's tiniest currencies. The battle would quickly move from the arcade into homes across the planet. The first Sega model to enter the fray was the SG-1000. This console initially sold well, but was outdone by the Famicom, a precursor Nintendo machine. Their reluctance to collaborate with third parties would be the SG-1000's undoing, and a grim sign for their company's future. The company also had to suffer through one of the worst catastrophes in gaming history, a monumental disaster that would shake the very foundations of the industry, threatening to destroy it forever. That was, of course, E.T. While the E.T. film was a lovely adventure from Steven Spielberg that is widely accepted as one of the cornerstones of American film blockbuster, the game adaptation was a different story. The gaming industry was once a crowded market, where many companies all competed with separate consoles vying for attention. The result was that quantity overtook quality by a huge factor. In many ways, the much-hyped E.T. adaptation was the straw that broke the camel's back. The game's hideous design and esoteric gameplay style threw customers off of the very idea of gaming consoles. This led to the dark days known as the video game crash of 1983. Many companies fell as landfills were stuffed with unused copies of what many consider to be the worst game in history. If you listen closely on a warm summer night, they say you can still hear the sounds of several thousand unplayed E.T. games crying out in sadness. Sega luckily managed to survive the crash and came through with the Mark III and Master System. These consoles failed to compete against the legendary Nintendo Entertainment System, or NES, but did manage to snag the European market. This gave the company enough success to continue on to one of their most notable consoles. Yes, at last we come to the long and brutal tale of the Sega Mega Drive. Thanks to the European success of the Master System and renewed arcade business, Sega was ready to unleash the Mega Drive. Unfortunately, Nintendo decided to unleash Super Mario Bros. 3, one of the most beloved titles of all time, right before. This hurt the Mega Drive's early numbers and put a spotlight on Sega's greatest challenge, Mario. For the North America launch of the Mega Drive, several decisive strategies were put into place. The marketing campaign for the new console would focus on an aggressive anti-Nintendo message. It would also brand itself under arcade-style appeal with several new titles aimed at building the library. Michael Jackson's Moonwalker and Joe Montana Football were among the titles pushed forward. Perhaps the most important task, however, was to create a mortal enemy for Mario that would make the plumber seem like he was walking in slow motion. The expert team of designers like Yuji Naka, Naoto Oshima, and Hirokazu Yasuhara went to work building a character who would stand as Sega's mascot for all time. Rabbits, armadillos, and kangaroos were all conceived to be the basis for this character, but all were rejected. Then, finally, a character rose from the 16-bit primordial ooze to become one of gaming's greatest titans, Sonic the Hedgehog. He had everything gamers didn't know they wanted: a vibrant blue color, red shoes based heavily on Michael Jackson's, a can-do cool guy attitude inspired by then-President Bill Clinton. Most notably, the game, named for the character, had a breakneck speed that made Mario's games seem sluggish by comparison. If ever a gaming team has ever succeeded in the task that was put before them, perhaps none can truly compete with the original Sonic team. They could not have built a greater rival for Western supremacy in the legendary 16-bit console wars. The Mega Drive was renamed the Sega Genesis as a message that this was a new beginning in gaming history. Their company motto was "Sega does what Nintendo don't." They were ready to meet their foe. In the Christmas holiday of 1991, the Sega Genesis outsold Super Nintendo 2-1. It would then dominate the same market for 4 consecutive years. It seemed as if the title was aptly named. Anyone would have assumed at the time that the genesis of a new gaming age had only just begun. No one could have predicted what was to come. Controversy would strike Genesis in 1993 for a few graphically violent games, most notably Mortal Kombat. The grisly and shocking brutality players could inflict upon each other enraged parents and led to news coverage on how the games might be affecting innocent children. This led to the creation of the Entertainment Rating Software Board, or ESRB. Sega pushed for this option so that they could continue selling their games now with brands upon every box that told kids exactly how edgy and dangerous the titles were. This could not have worked more in the company's favor, as they sold themselves as the cool alternative for the kid-friendly Nintendo. The bloody Genesis Mortal Kombat versus the safe SNES Mortal Kombat wasn't the only point of contention between the two. In fact, fans still reignite childhood arguments in brutal message boards and subreddits around the world over which version of Aladdin, The Lion King, or Earthworm Jim was superior. Many would declare that the Genesis was the far superior console whose successes dwarfed the SNES in every conceivable way. Unfortunately, this hubris was what inevitably began to hurt Genesis more than it helped. The Genesis was given two add-ons, the Sega CD and the 32X. This technology allowed gamers to play games on powerful CD-ROMs like Sonic CD. While the CD initially gave the Genesis a cool new feature, poorly reviewed games and a lack of interest ultimately made the add-on a failure. The 32X was then devised as a stopgap between the Genesis and the next generation. This proved to be a terrible business strategy, as the high price and low volume of the add-on ultimately failed to compete against Sega's next console that the company was advertising. Eventually, the 32X was cleared out of shelves for embarrassingly low prices. These two add-ons signaled the end for Genesis and needlessly smear what could have been a massive gaming legacy. Perhaps the most notable act of hubris during this time was the rejection to work alongside Sony Entertainment. After the company had already offered a partnership with Nintendo and was rejected, it offered a hand to Sega. The rejection of this offer is still considered to be one of the most calamitous decisions in gaming history that would inadvertently lead to a future Armageddon. That dystopian future for Sega went by the name PlayStation. In the end, the Genesis may have done exceedingly well in North America, but other markets were owned by Nintendo. The Super Nintendo won the 16-bit war by massive margins. While Genesis claimed to be the new beginning for Sega, it would prove to be the end of its glory days. In the wake of Genesis, Sega wanted to follow it up with an exciting new console. The Sega Saturn was to be the console that would dominate the fifth generation of gaming. At the first ever E3, Sega announced that the Saturn would arrive 4 months earlier than expected. This shocked gamers and retailers alike. The console released with insufficient numbers and a price tag that was too high against its competitors. Unfortunately, the competition was stronger than ever, with industry-defining consoles like the Nintendo 64 and the original PlayStation making their debut. Against such heavy competition, the Saturn crumpled. The company would then begin work on one of their most beloved consoles, the Dreamcast, among financial worries due to the Saturn's failure. It was then that they made yet another fateful mistake that could have changed gaming history. The massive computer company Microsoft was looking to get into the gaming market. They offered Sega the chance to let them develop the Dreamcast and help them with their financial problems. Sega refused. This rebuttal ultimately led to the creation of the original Xbox, the second decision that very well may have sealed Sega's fate forever. All hope for the company now rested upon the Dreamcast. With a risky price reduction in the West and a ton of hype surrounding the console, the Dreamcast entered the gaming market against several giants. The Dreamcast initially went over well and had several innovations that were ahead of its time. Most notably, Dreamcast offered online support. This was a revolutionary idea that came too early, as the internet was not as reliable or as readily available as it would be only a few years later. Ultimately, their old rival Sony rode in on the most successful console in gaming history, the PlayStation 2. This behemoth offered a devastating amount of third-party and original titles that the Dreamcast couldn't hope to compete against. Not only that, but the console also doubled as a DVD player, a function that would offer versatility the Dreamcast couldn't hope to match. Like its most famous hero Kratos, the PS2 decimated every other gaming god that came into its path. Thus came the end of the Sega line of home consoles. A sad tale that has formed the entire gaming industry through its successes, yes, but mostly its failures. The baffling choices not to partner with Sony or Microsoft directly led to two of the biggest gaming empires of the modern age. Today, the company still makes games, but is frequently shrouded in controversy. Even Sonic the Hedgehog, arguably the company's greatest creation, can rarely get a well-reviewed title off the ground. Sonic has languished under several poor creative decisions and questionable story directions. Games like Sonic Boom, The Rise of Lyric, Shadow the Hedgehog, and Sonic the Hedgehog 2006 have permanently damaged the reputation of this gaming giant. In fact, Sonic Mania, a title that directly attempted to recreate the game's Genesis glory, has been one of the few titles to reinvigorate the franchise. Poor business decisions, shoddy tech, and an inability to compete with its rivals crushed the company's console dreams. and served as a warning for other potential companies. I would say that the lesson was learned, but we all know what happened to the Google Stadia. Thus ends the tragic tale of the last days of Sega's glory. What do you have to say about the bygone age of Genesis? Let us know below, and don't forget to like and subscribe to The Gamer.